Hi there, I'm Ashley from Crinkly Quilts. In this video, I'm going to show you how to cut your fabric for the Helix Nebula Quilt. There are 6 templates for this quilt pattern. There is the Cloud template, the Bridge template, the Triangle template, the Diamond, and then for the ring version, there is the Ring template, and then the Mini Cloud. Some other materials that may be helpful are a 60-degree ruler. This is the 60-degree diamond ruler from Creative Grids. You can use a 60-degree triangle ruler as well. I like the Creative Grid ones because they have the notches to make seam allowances less bulky. But you can certainly use the paper template that is included in the pattern if you do not have a 60-degree ruler. Also a rotary cutter, and then I like a smaller rotary cutter. This one is an 18mm blade. And then if you're using the templates, the acrylic templates, the Otif Grippy Non-Slip Coating Spray is what I use on the back side of my templates to make them non-slip. If you are using the paper templates that are included in the pattern, if you bought the PDF pattern, please print your templates at 100%, and let's get started. So first we're going to cut our fat quarters, and these are for our cloud shape or our ring shape, depending on which version you are making. So when you have your fat quarter laid out, you want to think of it as having 2 columns, so one on the right side and one on the left side. And you'll be able to cut 4 clouds per column, so 8 clouds per fat quarter, or 6 rings per column, or 12 rings per fat quarter. So what you do is you just align your template, whether you're using the ring or the cloud, in one of the bottom corners, and you just cut out your shape. I got a little wonky down there. I'm going to recut that bottom. Right there. Okay, so there's my first cloud. Now if I was cutting the rings, I would cut my ring right here, and then I'd move up, getting as close as I can to the previous cut, and then I'd cut out this shape, and then using my smaller blade I'd cut the inner scoop, and then move up, move up, move up, so on and so forth. So for the cloud shape, you do the same thing. You get as close as you can to the previous cut and cut out. So then I'm going to keep going, next cut, and then once I finish this column, I'll move over to my second column for the remainder of my pieces. For the ring version of this quilt, you can also use yardage. So you'll cut strips of fabric. I have mine folded in half, selvages at one end, and then I am going to line up my ring template so that the flat edges of the template are aligned with one of the flat edges of the fabric. And then I cut that out. I'm going to use my little blade to cut the scoop. Right, and there I have 2 rings. So then what I do from here is I just flip the template over. I'm going to get nice and tight to the previous cut. I can get a little bit closer, and then the flat edge is now on the opposite side of the fabric. So we rotate that template 180 degrees. I'll just slice that off first. All right, another 2 rings. Now I just open this guy up, and then you can get 1 more ring out of this folded piece right here. So if you are making the solid version of the Helix Nebula ring quilt, then you will get 5 of these rings per width of fabric. For the diamond template, you are going to have your width of fabric folded in half. You're going to start over at the selvage edge of your fabric, and you're just going to cut her out. And you just keep going down the fabric until you've cut as many as you can for your width of fabric. Continuing on with our background pieces, we're going to have our large width of fabric here to cut our bridges and our mini clouds. So for the bridge, you're just going to align the flat edge right here with the top of your fabric. You're going to cut your sides. Now you'll notice that the bottom edges of this template are angled. You can certainly cut those out, but later in the pattern you're going to be trimming your blocks to the correct size once you piece everything, so you don't necessarily need to cut this out right now, but it does reduce bulk within the seam allowance if those are trimmed. So just make a mental note of that, whether you want to trim them now or just trim that angle when you trim your blocks. Okay, so those are the bridges. Now we're going to leave this extra piece here. Now if you're making the cloud version, you can just put that in your scrap bin and use it on another project or something. If you're making the ring version, you're going to use this piece to cut out the mini cloud. So there's the mini cloud, and that is for the ring version. Now continuing on, we're going to flip our template 180 degrees. So now that the bottom edge has the flat piece, we're going to align that previous cut with the edge of our template. And then you just need to cut this side and the scoop. And you can trim out those little notches, these little angles here if you'd like. Now if you're making the ring version, you cut your cloud from here. If you're making the cloud version, you toss that into your scrap pile. Now you're going to open the remainder of your fabric, and you're going to get 1 more bridge and 1 more mini cloud out of this piece right here. So you should get a total of 5 bridges and 5 mini clouds per width of fabric. For our background fabric, we have these triangles that we need to cut. So you're going to have your width of fabric folded in half, and you're just going to put your triangle down here close to your selvage edge. You're going to cut this off, and then you'll notice that there are notches here. On the bridge pieces, I said that it is optional to cut out that angle. For these, it is optional to cut out the angles at the bottom, but I still prefer to do it just because it does reduce bulk within the seam allowance when I'm sewing my pieces together, and I feel like I get more accurate piecing when I have them cut off. So I like to cut those off of here. So then, oh my gosh, I totally didn't just explain that. So we start here, cut, and then once we make this cut, we're going, oops, that's the wrong side down. We're going to flip it 180 degrees and cut the opposite direction. So flip 180 degrees, cut the opposite direction. And you just continue to flop back and forth, flip, flop, until you get to the end of your fabric. And then once you get to the very end over here at this folded piece, you'll be able to open it up and get another cut out of it for a total of 23 triangles per width of fabric. When making the Helix Nebula Quilt, you'll finish sewing your block, and then you'll have directions to measure your block. So this is the 8.5 inch 60-degree diamond ruler from Creative Grids. And this is my favorite 60-degree ruler. So you'll see this one is pretty much perfect. It's not, I mean, not perfect, but it's an 8.5 inch triangle. So I'm going to leave that one. But if I were to come over and measure this one that I made, my ring blocks tend to get a little wonky. So I'm going to see if it measures to be an 8.5 inch triangle, and it's not even close. So what I do is I marked right here on the 2-inch line. So if you have a 60-degree triangle ruler that you like, or even the template that the 60-degree triangle ruler that comes with the pattern, the paper template, you can just mark 2 inches from the top. So you'll see, let me grab a ruler real quick. So 2 inches from the top, you're going to mark right there on the edges. And then right here where it's the 8-inch triangle line, I mark 1/4 inch from the edge. So I have where my rings are supposed to line up. And then right here where I marked on the 2-inch line is where my diamonds are supposed to line up. So right there. So then I'm going to trim off all the excess, and then I'll rotate my ruler, line up the edge that I just trimmed with the 8-inch line, and then trim the bottom. So then I'll have an 8-inch triangle.